Good afternoon, everyone. Today we are accompanied by Mr. Andrea Stegher, a president of IGU, International Gas Union. Mr. Andrea has 25 years of experience in the gas and LNG market and also a true global gas leader. Today we will interview him on his expertise in relevancy to Southeast Asia countries and especially Indonesia in this market. Stay tuned.
Thanks for your question. Indeed, there are many dimensions in that question. Let me try to address them one by one. First and foremost, I think we have to be very mindful of the fact that we have two different challenges. The first one is to continue delivering energy to the people, because of course we are serving a need. We are serving population energy demand, which is growing, and is growing because of course there is lifestyle increase and progress in human lifestyle in a way, and there is dimension in terms of population which are growing as well. At the same time, unfortunately, we are quite out of track, if you wish, with respect to the targets that we are trying to meet for the climate targets. So we have to do even more, and we have to progress faster with more technologies, more solutions, and we consider in the IGU, the International Gas Union, that gas is essential in this pathway. We think there is a lot of opportunities here in the region as one of the first area to look at in terms of development, in terms of dimensions, population, phenomena, dynamics. And this is also a region which is requiring quite an attention in terms of investments. Investments both in production, both in infrastructures, and in new solutions as well. But I am absolutely positive about what I'm seeing progressively. Of course, there are challenges, as usual, which are mainly related to the fact that, of course, the concept of cheap energy somehow is to be addressed. My preferred term in that respect is affordable. This requires the value chain to be in equilibrium. So production and consumption are not at the opposites. They are part of the same solution. Tomorrow in the evening, Indonesian time, we are at the IGU promoting the release of different flagship reports, because we do think it's very much of the essence to provide clear data which are the basis of any collaboration and discussion going around. The price survey report is an historical report we have been producing for many years, and is providing a little bit of a guidance on how prices are structured in different parts of the globe. So gas and gas competition, oil index, of course there are many different nuances. Because the important part is also to recall and recognize that there is no one-fits-all solution. It's important to understand the differences, compare them, and adjust. So this is one report we have released last month, one other flagship report, which is the LNG report, which is very much, let's say, in the hot topics of today's discussions about LNG, for sure. We also have the Global Gas Report, where the last edition was released in August last year, and the next one will be late August this year. Because again, it's important for us to provide clear data sets to make a meaningful discussion. What I mean by that, for instance, we are talking about electrification, which is very important. At the same time, we have to recognize that electricity today is just 20% of energy. So it's important to combine things. LNG, we have a lot of new LNG coming on stream, and progressively there is a solid number of projects that are envisaged. At the same time, we are still having a tight situation, considering the fact that the markets are very fastly evolving. Just to give you a number, in the last couple of years, 23 and 4, LNG trade grew by 10%. The overall good trade index grew by 5%. So LNG is moving twice as fast, but we have to continue. It's very important, and let me go back to Indonesia for a second if you wish, and allow me to be a little bit blunt here. If there is a winner today in Indonesia, it's coal. So we have to, again, look at how things are meeting all the different, let's say, needs. Of course, you have to have security, energy affordability, and of course, address the climate targets. I think, and we think in the IGU, that gas is one of the powerful instruments that the globe at large, and for sure this region and Indonesia for sure, has to, let's say, create a more balanced approach between these challenges. So giving energy security, making energy affordable, but at the same time address the climate targets. Let me be brief on that. If we are using gas for power instead of coal, we are reducing now by 50% CO2 emissions. So that's a very powerful message, I would say, in terms of how gas can contribute. Because when we are talking about climate, we normally talk about 2050, 2060. These dates are meaningful if the trajectory is meaningful. Because the point is not just turning the key in 2050 or 2060. It means nothing there. We have to arrive there with reducing emissions. And we are not there, as I told you.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, if we are there, we already know it. Everybody will know it.
And by the way, we have to acknowledge that energy poverty globally is still an important phenomenon that we have to tackle. Of course, it's improving the situation in Asia, but it's still very much to be addressed, for instance, in Africa. And that's where domestic resources, natural gas, and new gases for sure can play a role. Three dimensions which to me, security, affordability, and climate attributes, which to me are real sustainability. I call it sustainability 360 degrees, first of all. Second point, finance is essential. And what I mean by that is not just the fact that we have to open up again the multilateral funding for gas projects, but we have to create more long-term relationships. Because again, we are somehow skewed into a more short-term vision, which is not conducive to having more credible business cases and visibility. As I told you before, we have to align the interests of producers and consumers. Because again, if prices of energy are not affordable, of course consumers suffer. But if they are too cheap, then there is no production. So we have to strike a reasonable balance. Of course, in that respect, policymakers are also having a very important role to promote a concrete equilibrium. Because of course, the tendency sometimes is to look at the short-term targets saying reduce costs. This has impacts, of course. We cannot afford to have industry not having their reasonable returns. And of course, these are long-term investments. So normally, as a European, I'm normally saying that we have 2030 targets on top of the 2050 targets. But 2030, today in 2025, is already today in industrial cycles. Because we have to take complex decision projects to be implemented, delivered to the market, and we have to construct maybe value chains. So it's important to address the concept of shortage of energy. When we were told about the net zero targets, we were maybe not focusing enough on the fact that some of the assumptions were very ambitious, let me say, in a euphemistic manner. Demand was depicted to reduce, which is not materializing, honestly speaking. So we have, again, to invest. In that respect, whenever you have domestic resources, to me is a no-regret move. because it's a best combination of things. At the same time, we have to understand how flexibility, diversification, collaboration, at regional level at least, is conducive to the best possible results. Again, if I look back at the Paris Agreements, Article 6 of the Paris Agreement is mentioning exactly voluntary international cooperation. So if we are serious about tackling in the right manner the climate challenge, and at the same time provide the energy that people need, we have to increase the cooperation. I think there are many different layers. The first one is indeed to create connectivity. First point. Connectivity means different things. Connectivity can be a power grid, as I've been hearing about the potential for a super power grid connecting ASEAN, which is an important project. Of course, we have to be mindful of the fact that when you connect, you have, of course, pricing signals moving around. So again, this is requiring policy making, addressing market signals in the right manner. At the same time, let me address one point that was mentioned also in KL last week, which is CCS. Carbon capture and storage. There are places where you can maybe store better than others, and places where you have emissions instead of others. So you have, again, the possibility to create connectivity in creating joint platforms and projects that are benefiting from the best of different worlds. It's requiring very much an extra effort, if you allow me, to create the combination of projects which are benefiting from different sources and different players. I think here the gas industry at large has demonstrated, especially in the last years, how flexible we can be, how differentiated in terms of diversification of projects, how the interactions are moving, how the LNG has become the glue, if you wish, of the global gas network. But this is just the start. We have to continue and progress. As you were rightly pointing out, there are different, let's say, moments in market developments. And of course, this is positive in a way because the new coming markets can benefit from previous experiences. Again, one of the IGU, let's say, long-standing advantages is to have technical committees to share best practices and so on and so forth. But back to Southeast Asia, I think here there is a concept of diversification of sources. If I look at Europe, what we benefited from in 2022 when we had to move away from Russian gas was the fact that we had a very well-developed infrastructure that was allowing us to flow gas in different manners. Again, let me give you a simple figure for Italy, my country. We were importing from Russia 40% of gas demand in 2021. Now it's zero. And we have made that up with different sources, different flows, different routes, an increase of LNG imports, and we are importing 90% of our domestic demand. We were a producing country in the 50s, but then demand grew and production went down. So we had to change. And again, this is, a long-term planning in a way that is required for this region as well. Because it's important and incumbent to promote the right infrastructures, to be all the time in a position to manage flexibility. Normally in my, let's say, 25 plus, almost 30 years of experience, I've been always looking at what if. So we cannot afford not to have energy. So we have to create the case right and discuss with the policymakers, regulators, industry, consumers, why we are promoting certain initiatives and why these initiatives can be beneficial. Sometimes it's an insurance policy. Insurance policies are difficult on a free market. But sometimes you have a combination between free market and state intervention. This is very much true, especially with new technologies. And let me go back 1 year ago. 1 year ago, we had the first 60 years of the LNG industry. And it took a while to develop standardization, best practice, all the interoperability, all the elements that are making every vessel potentially reusable in different parts of the globe. This is very key to providing that flexibility that also in this region will be absolutely paramount.